where they would actually commandeer school buses for us to come to campus and take us to an offsite place. That's in our plan, but because we're being live streamed, we don't want to publicize where we would go. But it is a local venue that we would go, at which point our parents would come pick up the children. And so we have a beginning to end protocol in place for that. And that drill is happening Thursday at 1.
Right. I knew you had something in mind, but I just thought, I would ask because wasn't it in December when that unfortunate Sandy Hook
I don't
case
recall
took
the
over?
date, but this one is it's tragically placed on our calendar, but it's one we do at the beginning of every December. So terrible that it takes place after that tragedy in Michigan, but we do, like we do the tornado drills twice a year and fire drills every month. We do the family reunification plan twice a year as well, in addition to the intruder drills where we lock down and shelter in place. So all of those safety protocols are in place here, and we're ready to go. We don't actually evacuate the children to the offsite location, just because we don't want to burn our bridges with the police department, as they would need to get buses for us, and the offsite location would need to be ready to receive 800 people. So we're going through the protocol with everything but actually going somewhere else.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Scott, as you called the meeting to order, it was 12:15 when we secured a quorum. So.
All right, thank you. And I'm showing 12:15 on my computer right now. So let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, our December 7th, 2021 Peak Charter Academy Board meeting. Kaditra, can you do us a quick roll call, please?
Of course. Scott Iden.
Go here.
Diane Holt.
Here.
Dixie Newsome.
Here.
Paula Rigsby.
Here. Sorry
for the delay.
Here.
So that is
all right, Paula. That's all right, Paula. You have to bring refreshments for the next meeting.
Refreshments.
Cookies, Kool-Aid, something like that. Quickly, before we do the approval of the December agenda, does anyone have any changes or additions or call outs that we need to note on the agenda? All right, then I think we need to vote on the approval of the agenda. So can we have a motion?
Diane, I so move.
Dixie, I second.
Come on, Kaditra. You know the. Come on.
Sorry, I was on mute.
You know,
right.
I'm just.
Got it.
Yes.
Diane.
Yes.
Dixie.
Yes.
Paula.
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
All right, thank you, Kaditra. Thank you, guys. All right, let's move into our management reports. Mr. Pond.
And as you have a copy, I'm happy to move expeditiously. Thanks so much for a great first semester. We continue to mask. We have had only one case on campus of somebody who has had COVID. They were not deemed to be in close contact with anybody, nor did they transmit it here. We've also learned that another community stakeholder may have got it offsite during Thanksgiving, and they have not been back at school since. So there's no transfer or risk here. We are playing winter sports. If you want to come out for any basketball, the schedule is in there. We'd love to have you. I'm happy to take care of your tickets for you. We continue to work towards our mid-year academic evaluations of our students. Kindergarten through third grade literacy is going to happen right after we return from break, as will our North Carolina formal check-in, which are those middle of year, end of grade type testing. So we'll have more data after January. We do continue to work with our exceptional children and our English language learners, especially because the learning loss of being closed for the pandemic has affected them as well, as we'll talk about with the data. We have one position open. That's a brand new position that we were given due to the increase in our diversity. We have a higher number of English language learners than we anticipated. So NHA has graciously given us a new position, and we are starting to interview for that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Steve, one quick question I have.
Sure.
And I'm sorry, actually, my mother always told me ladies first.
No question.
No questions.
I apologize. I jumped the gun there in my zeal to work through the agenda. Steve, those two cases of confirmed cases of COVID, we don't need to know who these people are, obviously. But I want to get a feel for, are we talking about a parent? Are we talking about a vendor? These two people that we are aware of, because I think this directly relates to our face mask policy. In other words, if those two outbreaks, I'm going to phrase it this way, essentially we're outside of the school, but they're related to the school, a parent or what have you. I think that speaks some volume for maintaining our face mask policy. In other words, somebody could say, well, why are we worrying about face masks if we've had two confirmed cases? So can you tell us about those people's relationship with the school?
Sure thing. And I think the reason to wear face masks is because we've only had 2 cases since COVID began. One of them is a part-time employee who goes between different schools, and they believe they picked it up elsewhere, but they are on our campus 2 days a week working in an ancillary support category.
So those other schools, are they schools that have mask policy in place?
Yes, correct. I was double checking with Doug. The masks are helping because that was right before Thanksgiving break was the first COVID positive that we've had on campus since anybody began. And because of our safety measures in which we are masking all the time, we're not with somebody for more than 15 minutes within 6 feet of that person. All of those protocols we have in place have kept us COVID positive free. We since learned actually this morning that we have a student who had been staying home since during Thanksgiving break. They had not been here all of last week because their parent tested positive. And so they emailed us when they got back and they said, hey, I'm positive, but can my child come to school? And Shauna and Hannah said, no, they need to quarantine with you. Even though you were vaccinated and you were positive, your child does need to quarantine because they're not fully, but we have learned as of this morning that they were COVID positive, but they have not been at school since prior to Thanksgiving, which would have been November 16th. So well past the quarantine period, and they're not going to return because we get out Friday, December 17th. They have to quarantine through that. So they won't return on campus until January 3rd.
So the first person had significant scenarios or possibilities for additional exposure or exposure outside of peak. That one team member is only part-time at peak. So and I wanted to just have my head wrapped around that because, a lot of the parents are, concerned about continuing with face masks, but I also want to have the context for what's going on. So that second person, what's their relationship to the school?
They're a student who has been quarantining because their parent transmitted COVID over the Thanksgiving break.
I beg your pardon. You just went through that. I just glossed right over.
Yeah.
So that is the second person.
That is the second person. And those are the only 2 that we've had because
that
so focused
student
on masks.
Was the student confirmed?
The student is confirmed as of this morning.
Yep. Okay. But that's because they're in-home exposure to.
Yes, from their parent.
And let's face it, we have eighth grade and down. I think those are young human beings that probably have a lot of close contact with their parents.
Yes.
You know what I mean? As opposed to like a teenager that would say, we're going to stay separated in the house. Okay. Well, Steve, thank you. I just wanted to have some context around that.
Sure.
Because again, you of all people know how we have had some parents dissatisfied.
Yes.
With the mask policy, but the mask policy is, supports the fact that we have not had an outbreak.
And that's what we point to as well. And especially since 5 to 11-year-olds have just been allowed to start getting vaccinated shortly before Thanksgiving, and the rise of this new Omicron variant, in addition to the Delta variant, which is still out there. These 2 variants, they're not even sure yet if the traditional COVID vaccine how it impacts those variants. So we continue to be vigilant. We continue to sanitize whenever we enter and exit the buildings or classrooms. We sit in assigned seats, both in the lunchroom and in the classrooms.
Gotcha.
And we try to minimize any kind of touch or contact whenever possible.
Well, and I think a key argument for the masks is the simple scientific fact that, inoculated or not, you can transmit or receive
Absolutely.
the virus. So it doesn't matter if you've had 8 COVID shots.
Right.
And that's where I believe the mask comes in to play a big part in, limiting the amount of potential exchange. So I appreciate you filling me in on that, because,
Yes, sir.
well, filling all of us in on that, because you never know when we might get the next mask complaint email, but haven't had any complaints about COVID breakouts at the school, have we? So that's good. And sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off. I think you ran through all 6. Yeah.
Yes, I ran through any of the new things that were on there because the others were carryover information.
Okay. Ladies, any questions for Steve after my question?
None.
No.
And I'm happy to move on to the dashboard if you like.
Let's go for it.
Okay.
Dashboard.
Well, thank you. The NWEA test is a measure of academic progress that our students take the beginning of the year. So the data that you have on the initial page, which is page 6 of the document, shows the growth of our students. On the left side, you see 2021 to 2022, which is the current year. That's where we want to focus on, because it's looking at the assessment given to our students this year at the beginning of the school year versus the one given to them at the beginning of last school year when we were completely out at home, and then the progress throughout the year. So as you're looking across the top, on the left side, you see a new category, which means students who are new to Peak this year since we opened, who we did not teach all of last year. And then returning students are there as well. So looking at it, we have the conditional growth percentile of all students is 55.6, returning students is 55.5%. And it measures growth related to greater than or equal to the 50th percentile nationwide. The NWEA MAP test, I believe, is given to 10 million kids throughout the country. And so it's a really good assessment because it allows, for example, my son's performance may say he is reading at an 8th grade 4th month level, but his math is a 6th grade 3rd month level. And so it tells you across the country and against the standard where your child is. So looking at growth over the past year, which was the most difficult I've ever had in my career, we are in the blue, which is good for the growth of all returning students and all students in general. We don't have enough data to measure with the math for the new students because they are here versus wherever they came from last year, if they were in school at all. The same thing with the reading. We're in the blue, 55.7th percentile or above. And the same thing overall with all students. So all students overall are at 55.7%. Blue is the positive because we want to be equal to or above the 50th percentile of all students nationwide. Then at the bottom of that first page is proficiency. And so that's the students of what they actually know compared to their current grade level. So as you all know, last year was very impactful. Students were learning from home at least through middle of October, at which time 1/3 of our students came back. We continue to teach concurrently with 1/3 of our students in the building and about 2/3 out until January, when we increased the number of in-school learners to about 40 to 45%. So the majority were still at home. We had a little under half in school until April, when we evened out. It was about 50-50. And our teachers were teaching just like we are through a webcam to students who were sitting at home. And we don't know how actively engaged they were, if they were sitting online, if they just had the computer on, if they were doing their classwork and participating or not. But looking at the proficiency data, the 2021-22 students from fall this year to fall last year, which was the 4th month of the pandemic, to about the 16th month of the pandemic, math proficiency was 82%, which was only a 2% drop from pre-pandemic numbers, which to me, looking at the data, is phenomenal because throughout the entire year of the pandemic to that point, or 16 months to the pandemic, our math proficiency dropped for our students who we taught only 2%. Now, students who were new to Peak this fall, they dropped collectively 12% from what their proficiency was at whatever school they learned at in 2020 to 21. So we're going to do our best to help them grow throughout this current school year. But going through a pandemic year and only having proficiency decrease 2% in math and still having proficiency be at 82% in math, we're pretty happy with that, although we want to focus on that growth, which, as you saw above, was in the blue, especially for our students who were here. Looking at reading in the middle vertical column, we actually had our returning students demonstrate 1 percentile growth throughout that 16 months of the 12 months of the pandemic that they were at home. So 87% are proficient in reading from the beginning of this year to the beginning of last year, and that's an increase of 1%. For a total overall of 85% proficiency in math and reading. I'm happy to go through the details of all the data if anyone would like. As you read through, you could see the free and reduced proficiency percentages. We have very few students that are free and reduced lunch eligible. So it's a very marginal low number that doesn't have much impact on the greater collective number. If you look at their proficiency and their growth, if you flip over to page 7 of our packet, that's our English language learners. And as you can see, there were 25 ELL students. We were just under the 50th percentile at 49%. In math, reading was 64.7%, the percentile. So kudos to Miss Ambrosia for her work with our ELL students, even during the pandemic and even learning at home through virtual means for about half of our students for the year. And their proficiency in math, the ELL students, the proficiency was 52% during at the beginning of this school year versus last school year. And that we attribute that largely to the need for in-person instruction, especially for students who are learning a different language that may not be able to work virtually with a teacher because they're not physically with that teacher able to ask individual questions and be there to see and read in addition to having the auditory input from that teacher. When they are working with their EL teacher, with Miss Ambrosia and their classroom teachers, they actually went up 6% on reading. And we also attribute that to the individualized instruction that Miss Ambrosia gives them, which focuses primarily on reading. So the proficiency went up, as did their growth in math and reading, which both climbed, as you can see, if you flip over to page 9. While their proficiency is a bit lower, the impact of the quality instruction that they got from the classroom teachers and from the EL teacher, Miss Ambrosia, impacted them as well. Page 9 focuses on our students with individual education plans, students with special needs, exceptional children, and their growth was also phenomenal during the pandemic year of 2020, 21, from the fall of 21 to the fall of back to the fall of 2020. They grew. They're in the 62nd percentile in reading and the 69th percentile in math. So that's the blue across the top of page 9 where it says NWEA growth. Those are students with IEPs from last year to this year. And that's what that assessment measures. And if you look at proficiency, also in the blue. So there was no fall to fall change or learning loss in math and 14% improvement from fall to fall in reading as measured by the measure of academic progress. Are there any questions I can answer for anybody about that? I'm going to make my screen big again so I can see you. But really that MAP, the MAP test, shows where they were last September to where they are this September. And I'm really proud of the faculty, staff, and students for all of their work in minimizing learning loss. Really the only area where we had that overall was -2 points or percentile points for math, but everything else was positive improvements.
Board, any questions for Steve?
And if any come up, you're welcome to email me offline and I can respond to any you may have about data.
Well, Steve, I'll say, I mean, obviously, no doubt the whole COVID and pandemic situation obviously has had an impact, but I want to say the word you used was phenomenal, and I think I'll echo that sentiment. I think it's phenomenal that we've got numbers in the blue like we do. I'll just summarize it that way. I mean, so especially in the face of what we're hearing with other institutions, other schools, the public school system, the regression that they've experienced. So
Steve, with the
if you ever get tired of hearing it, nice job.
Well, thank you.
yeah,
Sorry, Diane.
good job. I just have one quick question.
Yes,
of
ma'am.
the IEP students.
Yes, ma'am.
What do we know? What percentage of those are new to Peak?
We don't have that data here, but if you'd like, I can get that for you.
Yeah,
I know we don't have a high number. Most of our students are returning who have IEPs. We traditionally add a couple each year, but if you'd like, I can ask for that. Or Khaditra, if you could get that data for us on page 9, is the percentage of IEP students that are new to Peak.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a question when I was looking at the data, how many had, carried over from last year.
Well, I must say that our special education team is they work so hard. Like I mentioned, Miss Ambrosia, all of our teachers do, but especially those that work with the exceptional children and English language learners. They're just
yes, they've been all
overcompensating for the barriers that are created when students aren't here or when they're at home and they're not logging on to connect. We, like other schools, dealt with that where parents, they had to work. So their child was at a daycare and the daycare wouldn't let them get online to do school. So they were working and learning paper, pencil, and sending things back to school, or in some cases, not at all.
There are lots of obstacles for sure.
I know you do this, but be sure to let all of your teachers know how proud we are of their hard work, because that's where, as we say, the rubber meets the road with those teachers. So we really appreciate the hard work of your teachers.
Well, I will be happy to, and they make my job easier. That's, as you all know, who are educators. And if you're coming next Wednesday to dinner and you'd like to share a 30-second to them, I always do that as well, but I welcome Cheryl or Diane or any of you that can come. I know they would love to hear from you if you want to just share some season's greetings and kind words. That would buoy their spirits dramatically.
Yeah, it means a lot.
Yes, thank you. And I know you who are educators know that from your experience.
Well, Steve, I'll say that every Super Bowl winning team needs a head coach that knows how to coach up and coach to success. So I look at our teachers and our staff as they're the players, they're the ones that have to go out on the field, but they need an excellent coach. So just keep being that Super Bowl winning coach, because you're like the Patriots, man. You keep winning the Super Bowl every year.
I try not to cheat, but
I don't know what no deflate gate for you. I have to echo Dixie's sentiments, and that just made me think, since I can't attend on Wednesday, that I think perhaps we should all send a message to Steve that can be, if you can't attend, we've got tickets. Steve, I'm going to send you a message and something. I mean, hopefully it won't be too campy and, sappy, but we most certainly are. I'm so proud of all those guys. Not that they need that, but what an incredible group of people.
This past year has been the toughest of my career. This is year 22, and just all of the external things. And I know it's the same for teachers. So I'll be glad to share anything, and I know they'll appreciate it. And thank you for your kind words about my coaching.
Oh, you deserve it. It's just the facts. If it was the other way around, we'd be looking for a new coach. Thankfully, that's not the case. So let's move on. Unless, are there any follow-up questions, team? So let's go ahead. And if you do have ones, we can always share those questions with Steve after the fact. Let's move on to what is being titled as a retention update. Khaditra, what do you have for us on retention update?
I'm going to turn that over to Steve. Pretty much the only thing that we're doing at this point is just keeping the boards up to date on where we are if it comes to any potential retentions for students, because the initial communication starts coming out to parents around this time of year.
And I apologize. I don't know why I thought you were going to address that, Khaditra. Steve?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
And I will echo what Khaditra said. We are already meeting with families whose scholars are struggling. We've completed all of our first semester conferences for the majority of our students. Some parents didn't choose to come for one, but our goal is to meet or speak with every parent. But those who are struggling, we have already met with this month, or there's one or two, and it's only a handful or two of students that we are really meeting with them to partner with parents to share academic strategies that they can use at home. We share how we differentiate instruction at school, because our goal is that every student moves on to the next level, but we want to make sure that that student is ready for that. And in conjunction with the academic purpose, the attendance focus is also given throughout the year as well, that if a student is absent more than 10% of the time, they're deemed to be chronically absent. And so we continue to follow up. Shauna and Hannah in our office have done a great job of sending letters out to families, and often they'll get the letter and want to speak with the deans or me about that, and they'll share that maybe the child was ill, or maybe the child was traveling, or whatever it may be. But we just share that bottom line, if your child's not in school, they have less opportunity to learn and grow. And so we have those conversations now. We'll have them again in March. And then we'll also have one towards the end of the year before we make any decisions about students sustaining their grade level or moving on. We also are planning to offer our fourth quarter academic boot camp again. That's going to be 2 days a week for any scholar who's below grade level. They'll be invited to attend after school 2 days a week, but we also will work on focusing on remediation, reteaching, and retraining in the classrooms throughout the fourth quarter as well for students who need it. And our differentiated structure allows us to actually adjust student class schedules so we can group students together who may need that additional foundation building or reinforcement. So we're able to tier the instruction that we're giving based on the academic standards, whether students really need it to get by, whether they just need to fill in some gaps, or if they already have got it, we want to challenge and enrich them so they can be successful. So kind of 3 levels or tiers what we'll do, and that'll all start March 28th.
Super. Questions, team, for Steve? All right. Well, I love that no man left behind attitude. Well, sorry, no child left behind, but you know what I mean. Never leave a troop. Never leave one of your troops behind. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Khaditra, do you want to do a quick run on the board fund report? And I'll just throw out a comment that I reviewed it. I didn't see anything unusual or unexpected.
Right. Well, this board fund report is as of November 16th, 2021. And the board has an available balance to spend of $42,586.66. And this is your fund balance until June 30, 2022, that you have available to spend. Any questions?
Questions, team? Okay. Thank you, Ms. Khaditra. All right, let's go ahead and move into discussion items. Item 5A, identifying potential board members. Anybody have anything this month? Any new prospects? Any cousins of Cheryl's that we could? All right, well, not hearing any, let's go ahead and move on from item 5A. And always keep that in mind, because that next potential board member may be somebody who wishes to step into an officer's position at some point in the future. The next discussion item is item 5B, our 2020-2021 audit report from Plant Moran. I will just preempt any conversation on this by saying I have looked at this, I'm going to say end to end. And I have to say, it is such a pleasure to be engaged with a partner like NHA that takes the accounting responsibility so seriously and maintains such great records. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to actually go through this or not, but as I expected, all of our numbers are in line. There are no abnormalities or any inconsistencies with any of our processes or the outcomes of the audit report. I'm so pleased to see this is like our fourth year, fifth year. I can't even remember now. Every year, year over year, we have essentially, I'm going to say it this way, a spotless, clean audit. And I think in a great part that is completely attributed to our NHA partners and the methodology and approach that they use with maintaining our finances and maintaining our books in what is certainly an exorbitantly regulated and oversought industry. So with that said, that's all I wanted to share on it. Khaditra, I don't know if you had any specific details. Donna, if you looked at it and had anything, actually, let's just open it up to all attendees to ask questions or share any observations or anything.
Well, this is a follow-up to the last meeting where some certain language revisions needed to be made. So I connected with our manager of audit to share those changes, and they needed to be reflected in the draft. So Donna, I want to confirm with you that all the changes that I sent what you had sent me previously. So, and then updated any information that was received at the meeting. So I just want to make sure from you that it's all reflective in this document.
No, sorry.
Based upon what
Yeah, so Steve, I'm sorry, Scott, Steve, everybody. At the last board meeting, you guys began looking at your audit report, and I just pointed out, I mean, arguably it's a technicality, but I happen to think it's an important one. There's descriptive language regarding your lease and the services agreement, and I had raised this before, and I do note that it hadn't been changed. It's on page 3 of the audit report, page 21 of your packet. It's the academy-wide financial statements. There is a description of the services agreement, and there's a sentence that says, as part of the consideration received under the agreement, NHA also provides the facility in which the academy operates. That was the sentence that I had said before was inaccurate because the services agreement does not address the lease for the building, and NHA is not providing you the facility in exchange for the money under the services agreement. Indeed, you have a separate lease for that, and that is described elsewhere in the audit. So that was the sentence that I had requested be revised, and it was not revised.
That's the only one, because there were quite a few that you
had. Most of the other recommended changes had to do with statutory citations.
Right.
And those changes were made, changing the numbers from 150 to 38 to 218.
Okay.
And Donna, I'm sorry, Khaditra.
Oh no, you're fine.
I think you're about to summarize what I was going to try to summarize. So go ahead.
I was just going to say that did reach out to Plant Moran, and I wanted to have it in writing, and I'll send that to you all as well, because I asked the question about resubmission of the audit due to the language, and they felt that audit did not have to be resubmitted to the state because there were no changes to the numbers or anything. It was only those minor revisions to the language. So I did follow up. So I just wanted to update you on that I received an email from the auditor.
Okay, so good feedback. Donna, do you agree with that? Are you okay with that?
I would defer to the auditors on that piece of it. I think that's more of an audit function, and it does make sense. I guess
Them knowing what the rule is.
Yeah, I would ask if we can follow up with, these are the kinds of things that have a tendency to repeat themselves. And it's not, you know, that it's not that big of a deal, but it'd be nice not to have the same conversation next year.
Yes,
Yeah, it could save us some legal fees.
There you go.
And I also asked for an annotation to be added to, which is how we kind of keep up with various things that need to follow year to year. So I did make that request as well.
Okay, so Khaditra, you got a handle on that. That's not anything that we have to take action on or approve or anything, but we are going to be looking for an updated final draft with that lease change. And Donna, I'd have to say,
You want a final draft again or just reflective next year?
Well, for sure reflected next year. Donna, is this a necessity for this year?
I'd say it's up to the board. I mean, again, you kind of don't want to beat a dead horse, but you also don't want to, again, waste time on things multiple times. So I'd leave it up to you guys.
Well, so group, with the understanding and the advice from Donna that, I mean, we all understand the situation. And that's one thing, Donna, it's funny that you brought it up because it came to mind. I thought, what was that about the lease? I was thinking, you know, as I was reading through that. So we understand the relationship with NHA, the fact that we actually fund a lease monthly with payments through the system. I'm going to go with, as an officer of the board, I'm going to go with that I'm okay because we understand the relationship. We understand the services agreement and the separate lease with NHA. Plant Moran has validated that these numbers are not misrepresented and the numbers would not change. You know, that it would be just a narrative or a clarification of the lease. So I don't see a huge value add for Khaditra or for us as a board, just to have, and Donna, certainly no disrespect because you're the first person I want to hear. You're the first person I want to hear what their opinion is when it comes to something like this. But board, if you're in agreement with it, and I don't want to coerce you one way or the other, you speak up. If you guys would like to see a final draft with that text corrected, then we'll pursue that. Otherwise, shake your head no.
Okay. Well, my question is, can they just send a statement, a letter noting that a request to change was made and that it will be included in next year's report?
Can request that.
Just an annotation, like as I think Khadija used the term an annotation, just to say this.
Well, that was our internal system. When I say annotation, that's our internal system. I also want you guys to take into account too that we are still. I have not seen the documentation as well as to what's going to be finalized for the boards to review for the sale of buildings, refinance, that whole initiative as well. So I don't know if any, you know, language too could be impacted by that. I'm not sure because I haven't seen anything, but I just wanted to throw that out there as well. So Dixie, I have no issue reaching back out to them saying, hey, we requested for this change to be made since we're not going to create a new document, finalized document to share with the board. Can it just be noted that this is what we requested, or this is the language that should be in there? I have no issue requesting that.
Okay, so that if it comes up again, you know, can refer back and maybe just keep this on their front burner to make that
Yes,
notation
ma'am.
for next year.
We're going to
ma'am.
send you up there, Dixie, to take care of them. So
Yes, I'm ready to
we're
go.
we're going to get them to acknowledgement, and I don't think that's a bad idea. I mean, you're right, Dixie. That gives us some written.
Right,
I hate to say proof, but some written
right.
proof that we've requested it, and our expectation going into next year that the language would speak appropriately to the services agreement and the lease. So sorry, Kaditra. So add that to your list.
No worries, got it.
Mhm.
Unless anybody wants to speak in opposition to that, I think that's a fine idea.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree.
Okay. Actually, our next item then up for discussion actually is the sale of school facilities, formerly known as the Refinance Initiative. This is item 5C, and I think it's like page, oh gosh, what was it? In your packet, it is quite a ways down there.
Looks like 50.
52 is the 52 of the PDF package,
Mhm.
and page 50 of the actual PDF slides. But that's where it starts. So Kaditra, sorry, a lot of this is repetitive and a lot of this
Yeah.
we've seen and discussed. When I looked at this over the weekend, I didn't see anything about draft or anything about that. I thought we were at the point of I
If
thought
you
we were
go
at
to
the
if you go to page 64 of the PDF, you'll see kind of where they included prior to that all the information that you guys have already seen. And then they also included a progress to date to kind of give a summary of, where we were and where we are now. So still waiting on the documentation. I know that we spoke about this last month, if I'm not mistaken, about the updates and things like that. My department still has not received that information. So of course, when we had our department meeting yesterday, I was going to say Monday, when we had it yesterday, we were promised that we would receive an update this week. So as soon as I get that update, and then they have language for the board, I will make sure that you guys have an update as well on any information that's been shared with me to share with the boards. But page 64 is kind of going to be your reference point right now with just kind of the progress to date. So more to come. We'll just slide through the holidays, be patient, and come back in January and have this conversation.
Well, I hope we can meet that October 15th deadline they wanted us to approve by. So maybe we can shoot for October 2022.
Can I make a comment, please?
Most certainly.
Alongside what Kaditra just shared, I received an email from Tim Plunkett, the attorney that I've been in communication with, on November 19th, describing that that NHA reached a point where they didn't believe they were going to have the full group of schools that they had hoped to have in the fall package, if you will, and that they were going to wait until the spring to go to the market with the bonds. So he acknowledged that they had not yet sent updated documents, but they expected to do so very soon. So my understanding is the timeline as much as Kaditra shared, but he did reach out to us and give us that update back right before Thanksgiving.
Well, that's a bit of relief. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, not that we're getting direct pressure from them, but we also don't want to be an obstacle to forward progression on this, because arguably there's a huge financial advantage for the schools, for our school with this. All right, so it sounds like more to come on that topic. We must really love that one. We seem to have it on the agenda every month. Let's see, next up is, I believe, Mr. Pond's area, our discussion item 5D, the fall employee engagement survey summary.
I wanted to ask before Steve starts discussing this, can everyone that's not speaking put their phones on mute? We're getting like a little feedback and it could be from the live feed. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much. Every year, for those of you who've been with us, there's a third-party survey called Glint that provides a insight into our teacher satisfaction, employee engagement, working conditions, all of those things. Different districts call them different things. We do this twice a year, both fall and spring. And there's a nice summary that's included in your packet. I'm pulling it up so I can show you what page. It is page 68. This year, fall 21, we did it. We were coming back, and it was the first time we were back and fully in person since prior to the pandemic. But we're really happy and satisfied with our ratings. Looking at the overall score, the employee engagement means their satisfaction, their wellness. We scored an 88. And that 88, to my understanding, is tops in North Carolina. It's up 4 points from the spring where we left off last year. And it's slightly below our pre-pandemic ranking of 91. These were the awards that we've received a couple years in a row, being in the top 10th percentile of NHA. We got 2 of them before the pandemic and would love to be recognized again because we have an amazing staff. Each of these categories and indicators here, and the italicized sentences are what the employee rated. And as you can see to the far right, our score, very excited that everything's in the 80s and 90s. And there were actually more indicators for the staff that break down even more detail. But really excited overall that our staff feel welcome and that they belong and they can be safe and cared for, that we have a great culture here. And then they have confidence in the deans and I as their leaders. So any questions about that particular item? It's something that's done twice a year. And we're really excited to have that completed and to be recognized and be able to recognize our team for their joy and also where we can continue to improve.
Any questions,
As you can
team?
see, every category grew since last year.
Yeah, that's what I was just looking at that from spring to fall. And again, during the infamous COVID pandemic. Nice work.
Thank you.
You
Yeah,
guys
it's
have any
tough.
questions?
We have to
sorry.
take care. We have to take care of our folks so they can take care of our kids. That's the big thing.
Exactly.
Any questions,
Good
you
job.
guys?
Great job.
Thank you.
All right, so that is the last of our discussion items. I was looking at the agenda this weekend and I'm not sure. I don't believe we need a closed session. Do we have any personnel hire situations, Steve? I didn't think we did.
Maybe he didn't hear
I
you.
have
You
it.
guys
I'm looking. Sorry, I was scrolling through the
Oh,
packet.
didn't know if my audio went out.
I did not see an email, but there's a section that has 2 teachers
Yeah.
in there, who I'm happy to discuss if you like. The last page was added on, but I did not get an email with resumes.
That's usually a triggering event for me.
Yeah.
You know, that we would get the resumes. So do we need to?
If you give me about 30 seconds, I'm happy to send you the resumes if you would like.
In the interest of
But
time,
I would have some concern about the board attempting to make a decision on a hire if you've not seen the resumes before the meeting.
Would as well.
Well, I certainly appreciate that position, and it's certainly something I know personally I prefer. I will say on the opposite side of that same coin, at least historically, since my time joining the board and my involvement with the board, we have always leaned into Steve's, and I say Steve, there's others involved, but I've always leaned into the current process that we have for vetting these potential employees. And frankly, we've never gone against any recommendation that has come from Steve or the other leaders. So you guys tell me what you prefer. We can table this and address it in January. That's not going to hinder, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't hinder any process that you have in place.
No, sir. They have already been brought on pending your approval, and you all have gotten their resumes in your inbox. I just sent them myself. I was able to download them and send them. And if you would like, as a board, I'm happy to walk you through each candidate. They're both doing a great job.
I think if you guys can agree that we can do this with some level of efficiency, I have 1:04 or 4 after the top of the hour Eastern time. We will need a motion to go into closed session for the review of personnel hires, please.
This is Dixie, so moved.
Second?
Oh, I second it.
All right. Cheryl?
She said yes,
You're
but
on
she's
mute.
on mute.
Okay.
I can
Diane?
see she's.
Yes.
Dixie?
Yes.
Scott?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
All right. So just wait about maybe a 10-second delay due to the fact that we're live when we go into closed session. So we're going into closed session at 1:05.
Roger that.